Imagine this scenario. You and two of your friends walk into a Quick Check one day to buy some drinks to take with you when you go fishing. You all end up deciding to buy the same drink, same size, and nothing else, and go up one at a time to pay separately. Afterwards, your one friend comments that $4 is pretty expensive for one 44-ounce soda. Your other friend says incredulously, "You paid $4? It was just 99 cents for me." Then you confess that you were charged $2 for your drink. Together you realize that even though you all bought the same thing, expecting it to be the same price, the cashier charged you all different prices. The first thing you start to ask is why. Immediately, as you and your friends begin making your way back to the store to complain and get a refund, you try to explain why this could have happened. Perhaps there was a glitch in the register's computer. Maybe the barcodes on your cups were altered by some deviant with a Sharpie and too much free time. Maybe the cashier assessed how much each of you would be willing to pay based on a hunch and took advantage of you. Or maybe he was discounting you and your friend who paid the least based on how much he liked you. Any of these seems plausible, but you don't know which one truthfully explains why you were charged differently. You get to the store. You confront the cashier and his answer is none of your explanations. He says, "That's just what the prices were." You scoff and press him for a real answer. Again, he says that charging you all different prices was just how it happened. Now you and your friends are angry and things are beginning to look ugly. You bang your fists on the counter and demand to know why you and your friends were charged different prices for the same item minutes apart. The cashier thinks for a second, and a flash of understanding comes across his face, and he turns to you with a contented smile and says, "You were all charged different prices because the prices were all different. The prices were different, and that's all there is to say." Frustrated and disgusted, you and your friends leave and decide that the best thing that they can do is call or come back later to complain to the manager, who you hope will reprimand or fire the absurd cashier. Now, this story, as unlikely as it would be to live out, demonstrates an important underlying point that is both central to The Stranger and a major issue in philosophy in general. The question, does everything have an explanation? In Chapter 1 of Part 2, we read how the magistrate's main hang-up with Meursault's account was that he offered no explanation for why he killed the Arab on the beach. In Chapters 3 and 4, during the trial, we see multiple characters try and offer explanations. Like the magistrate, the prosecutor, the lawyer working against Meursault, points to Meursault's behavior in the days before the murder to explain it, arguing that there is a connection between Meursault's reaction to his mother's death and how he acted during and after her funeral. When the lawyer defending Meursault objects to the conflation of the two, asking, "Is my client on trial for burying his mother or for killing a man?" the prosecutor asserts that only someone with the naivete of his esteemed colleague could fail to appreciate that between these two sets of facts there exists a profound, fundamental, and tragic relationship. In the next chapter, the prosecutor goes further and not only connects Meursault's character to the murder, but claims he is both morally guilty of killing his mother and even guilty of the murder that happens to be planned for trial in the same courthouse the next day. He says, "The one man paved the way for the deeds of the other, in a sense foreshadowed and even legitimized him. I am convinced, gentlemen, that you will not think it too bold of me if I suggest to you that the man who is seated in the dock is also guilty of the murder to be tried in this court tomorrow. He must be punished accordingly." Rather than treat the murder as if it is anomalous or its explanation is unknown, even if there is one, the prosecutor exhibits a human tendency to treat events across time as related and use them to infer an explanation that fits with them. We make inferences like this all the time in trying to explain things. In the scenario at the beginning of the video, you and your friends tried to connect possible events or motives that existed before being charged to the different prices, things like the functionality of the register, or a cause for the barcodes to be different, or what the cashier was thinking before ringing you up. Or for a simpler example, you see someone fall off her bike onto the pavement and start crying. So you infer she's crying because of the fall. You might further infer that she fell and then got hurt because of that, and then she cried because of the pain. Or you find an angry note under the windshield wiper of your car, and you infer that someone must have placed it there, and you wonder if it's from the guy you cut off hours ago to take that parking space. Notice that you do not even have to know what the explanation is to know that there is an explanation. If a hiker goes missing and a year later someone finds his remains, An investigator can offer reasons for why he personally cannot explain why the hiker went missing. The remains were too decayed to reveal the hiker's condition. Weather and plant growth have erased the hiker's trail, and animal activity may have moved his corpse, and so on. But there is, nonetheless, an explanation, which he realizes he doesn't fully understand or is not fully aware of. While the prosecutor doesn't settle for not having an explanation, other characters do offer explanations which, while not explaining Meursault's murder as thoroughly, are nonetheless explanations. Salamano and Marie are aware of the events described and interacted with Meursault before the murder. While they agree on the same course of events, they object to the prosecutor's interpretation of them, even though they cannot say what the alternative explanation is. Salamano kept saying, "You must understand," but no one seemed to understand, while Marie only sobbed, saying it wasn't like that. There was more to it, and that she was being made to say the opposite of what she was thinking, that she knew Meursault and he hadn't done anything wrong. Without an alternative explanation, the denial that the prosecutor's interpretation of the events becomes as implausible and ineffective as denying that Man Ray has Patrick's wallet.
It's not my wallet!
Celeste takes the stand and claims, "The way I see it, it's bad luck. Everybody knows what bad luck is. It leaves you defenseless. And there it is. The way I see it, it's bad luck." The judge, however, doesn't accept bad luck as a sufficient explanation, cutting off Celeste and saying, "Yes, fine, but we are here to judge just this sort of bad luck." Raymond similarly asserts that Meursault's circumstances and actions should be chalked up to just chance, both his presence at the beach and helping Raymond write the letter that led to the whole conflict with the Arabs. Just as the judge shot down Celeste's appeal to bad luck, the prosecutor likewise shoots down Raymond's appeal to chance by asking if Meursault's other actions could be ascribed to chance, implying that it would be absurd to explain every action to chance and thus remove all culpability behind Meursault's actions. On the final day of the trial, the prosecutor closes by giving an explanation that imparts motive and intent to Meursault, connecting all his actions before and after the murder in a way that makes sense even to Meursault. Quote, "I thought his way of viewing the events had a certain consistency. What he was saying was plausible." The defense attorney gives a similarly detailed explanation, trying to account for the same events while imparting different motives and intentions towards his mother, calling Meursault a tireless worker and a model son, after which other lawyers praised the attorney's closing defense. Now, in between the two lawyers' explanations, Meursault makes his one attempt at giving a reason for the murder, but doing so not necessarily to give the correct explanation, but because he felt an urge to take some action himself. "I stood up, and since I did wish to speak, I said, almost at random, in fact, that I never intended to kill the Arab. Fumbling a little with my words and realizing how ridiculous I sounded, I blurted out that it was because of the sun. People laughed." Now contrast this with Meursault being asked why he paused after the first shot. Meursault remembers the sensory experience of the moment, but without any understanding that offers a connection between what he felt and pulling the trigger. Quote, "Once again I could see the red sand and the burning of the sun on my forehead, but this time I didn't answer." Here, like the lawyers and most people are wont to do, he tries to explain the murder with things around it, yet even then doing so at random and fumbling with his words, as if Meursault doesn't even understand or believe what he means. The pressure to act and have some control over his fate leads him, perhaps coincidentally, to begin to look for and expect meaning in the same way that most people do. Now, we can begin to think about how all this fits together with Camus' absurdist philosophy with the help of two philosophical ideas, the principle of sufficient reason and brute facts. The principle of sufficient reason, or PSR, claims that for everything which exists, there exists a sufficient reason or explanation for why it exists. This is in line with the common sense view that makes you try to explain why you and your friends pay different prices for the same item. And it's also the view of the lawyers and society in general in The Stranger. Even the witnesses who appeal to chance or simply deny that the explanations given by the prosecution are correct are supposing that there is an explanation behind Meursault's actions, even if it is different than the one presented in court. In contrast to the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason, some philosophers such as Bertrand Russell have proposed that while a good number of things can be explained, some things exist and not only cannot be explained because we do not know their explanation, but they simply exist without explanation or reason for existing. Things which exist without explanation are thus brute facts, which we nonetheless have to accept. This is more in line with the absurd cashier's answer that the prices were simply different without anything further to explain them, and Meursault's initial understanding of the murder he commits, which is no understanding, because there is nothing to understand. It just happened that way, and it doesn't mean anything. We see this contrast between the intelligibility of events and their meaninglessness, too, in the way characters treat time. The prosecutor connects events before and after the murder to the murder, going even to the point of interpreting the separate murder to be tried the following day as connected rather than mere coincidence. That the prosecutor would connect events that Meursault is only tangentially close to because of circumstances beyond his control is, for Camus, the epitome of the construction of meaning where in reality there is none. Conversely, Meursault and existentialists are focused on living in the present. Rather than sitting through his trial understanding that it will determine his future and being concerned over how it will be shaped, Meursault often succumbs to a drowsy inattentiveness, being distracted by the sound of an ice cream vendor's horn, which reminds him of the sensory pleasures of the smells of summer and Marie's dresses. The immediacy of sensory pleasure, even through memory, makes him think, the utter pointlessness of whatever I was doing there seized me by the throat, and all I wanted was to get it over with and get back to my cell and sleep. In essence, whatever meaning and point can be made to explain his actions at any given moment, everyone finds himself experiencing things in the present, and without a future or past to measure them against or interpret them with, simple pleasures will always be preferable to pain, and there is nothing worth suffering for. Merci et adieu.